Oh, David disappeared on us.
He's good at that.
He is good at that. Andrew, I see that you're back. You disappeared for a minute too.
Yeah, I was. I'm not very Zoom
Tech savvy? Awake?
Yeah.
No.
I was going to try to change my background, but I don't know how to do that on live mode.
Yeah,
Right.
that's okay. We'll be okay without it.
Well, should we just do the intro?
Yeah, I mean, your video went away.
I think
do we know why?
I think I got it fixed. Let's just go ahead and start. And
okay,
I'll,
I was trying to stall while you were working on that, but that's okay. We can go ahead and start. So, hey everybody, this is So Many Sequels. If you're not familiar with us, we are a movie review podcast with a very simple premise. We review movies that have sequels. I don't think, with maybe the rare exception of a couple, we've been doing film franchises for the past, this is our third season. And if you're also not a fan of the show, you don't know what we're doing unless you heard. We're doing The Matrix tonight. We're kicking off the Matrix series. We'll do the first three movies. I say that like there's a fourth one. Not yet, but it's coming. And the way we decide it is a fun little game that we invented where we spin a wheel of movies, and whatever lands on, that's what we pick. I don't know, Garrett, do you have that nearby to show off? Let's show off the wheel a little bit. So we added, I don't know, what is there, maybe 7 or 8 movies on there. We each get veto power as to what goes on there, and then we spin it. Wherever it spins, that's where we're stuck. So we're landed on The Matrix now.
Right.
I'm Josh, by the way.
I'm Andrew.
We went around the room. Andrew.
I'm Garrett.
and I'm David.
Oh,
goodness
wow.
gracious.
Whoa.
Let's do this.
Did you do that
It's
on
time for
purpose?
the Matrix. What'd you say?
I said, did you do that on purpose? You
Do
purposely
what on purpose?
got the video done so you could put on your sunglasses.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm savvy. I'm
He
savvy.
definitely left to go find a costume.
No, I had the costume all ready to go. It was a plan.
Okay,
I love
great.
I wish I just had a blank screen though instead of my goofy Facebook profile.
Your avatar, yeah. So, like I said, it's Matrix Day. So let's get going on The Matrix. This is a good time for this, really, because we just hit the 20th anniversary of this movie last fall, I believe. Came out in 1999, a great year for movies.
Great.
There's actually a book about it that I'm reading very slowly about why 1999 is a great year for movies, and The Matrix is one of them. 4 Academy Awards for this one. Keanu Reeves, Lawrence Fishburne, ton of great actors. Let's go around the room and just give some first impressions of this movie. I don't think for any of us it was the first time seeing it. I know for Garrett it was the first time in a long time. Andrew and I saw it recently, just last year, and I don't know about David.
Yeah, it's been a little while since I'd
That
seen it,
sound right?
but I definitely saw it when I was younger.
Cool. Well, first impressions. Let's go.
Absolutely amazing. Still is after 20 years.
After all this time.
Yeah, it's crazy. You know, we watch a lot of movies, obviously, with this podcast, and the things that happened in 1999, a lot of times they don't hold up. And this, as crazy as everything that they did, as game changer for a lot of special effects, it still really holds up well. A lot of the things still look great. But goodness gracious, this is wild how good this still is.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, it's amazing the legacy that this movie would end up leaving. You know, it's easy to say that, you know, it's a good film, but I think the real mark is going to be how many people cite this movie as an influence. And I think we can get into that a little bit later, but it's definitely a movie with a big legacy. And first impression upon rewatch is that the movie was a lot, maybe it's just because I've seen it and I've seen it done a billion times, but it was a lot easier to follow than I remember it being when I was, you know, like I saw this movie the first time, I think when I was like, I don't know, 11, maybe 12. So it was pretty easy to follow this time around, but overall I quite enjoyed going through the Matrix again.
You know, I've never claimed to be a smart person.
And no one claimed on your behalf.
No, not in the slightest.
I wouldn't want to be a liar.
No, Garrett's a smart person.
Shut up, you liar. I am not smarter than this movie. In fact, upon the rewatch, I had to clarify many things with Josh because I struggle. I knew when he was in the Matrix, except like after he was reborn or awoken, everything makes sense as far as the timeline.
Right.
But like in that first beginning, I forget that that's the Matrix and just assume that's the real world. And so when his mouth just went away, my brain was like, "What is happening?" Because they do a really good job of A, confusing me, and B, making you think that it is just a dream. So many of these weird things that Keanu or Neo goes through, they do a good job of like having him wake up and you think it's a dream.
Right.
And so that just really adds to that level of confusion that you might have if you're really not paying attention, because this is not a movie that you turn on in the background. You got to focus. And for the first time in 20 years, I focused. I finally understood. I was like, oh, okay, I'm stupid.
Yeah, it definitely. It's a lot longer before they actually go to the real world than I remember it being. Like my memory is really not great on this because I just found it kind of felt like they get to the real world like really quickly. Like it just, I don't it's hard to describe, but I was actually surprised how much happens before you finally get Keanu or Neo into the real world and sort of learning about what exactly is the status of the world right now. Which I think is cool.
I think that's a really cool way to tell this story, because you do get really sucked into the world that they have built to make it believable, that by the time that you are brought into the real world with Neo or Thomas, you're just as shocked as he is, I think, to see the state of the world. What do they call it? The
Matrix.
No, the real world. They had a name for it.
Oh, the last city on Earth?
No, that was Zion. The desert or something? I don't remember. When we saw the cityscape.
Oh, right.
That was all torn up. It's shocking to Neo and to the viewer who has spent all this time in a digital world that they thought was real. So I really like that it takes a long time to get to that point for that exact reason. I mean, it's so beyond the way the world looks now. You've got the way humans look, which they're basically like kept on a life support system inside these gross pods and put into a digital world in just a form of captivity. It's wild. Right. And I think it came out at a interesting time in the way society was kind of zooming through technology.
Yes.
You know, by 1999, the internet starts to really take off as a mainstream thing. We're a few years out from social media still, but it seems like something that could happen. And I don't know them all off the top of my head, but there's like a billion different conspiracy theories about people living in a simulation. And I think a lot of that could easily be tracked out into the Matrix and the influence it's had on people.
Yeah, it's definitely a time. It was definitely a point in time where being somebody who knew about computers and how to work computers and things like that was kind of there was an element of like counterculture to it, hackers and knowing how to manipulate people's computers and manipulate things about the internet. It was kind of this cool, had an underground edge to it, and it's kind of one of the first movies that really kind of modernized. I don't know. But kind of really is like one of the standouts of like cyberpunk, this idea of like futuristic, but also kind of like grungy and dirty and stuff like that. And and it's kind of funny because like you said, Garrett, the movie opens up and it's so normal almost. It's so like, like things are, Keanu had a very like normal guy quality at the beginning of the movie. And they really get him to that point of being like a hero kind of guy by the end. So I was watching, I was like, man, Keanu seems like, obviously it's a long time ago, but he seems so young at the beginning of this movie, even though this was quite a few films into his career.
Yeah, and I will say that like if there's anything that's lasted from this movie, it's how stylistic it is. Like it borrows, it's much in the way of like a Tarantino film. It borrows so many like different elements, and it like presents it all in one giant spell swoop. You have It's like part neo-noir, part mystery, part science fiction, part action adventure, part thriller.
Yeah, part
And,
wire fu movie.
so what?
I said part wire fu.
Yeah, part wire fu. And like the Wachowskis were wanting to do. I was watching The Matrix Revisited before this began, and like
Oh, you're way ahead of us.
well, I was just watching that, and they're like everybody was saying that this is a great script. This is a great script, but like it's so ambitious that a lot of people were just like, well, it's a good script, but we don't know what to do with it. We don't know what it means. And
Right.
they said all the actors who read it said, we know exactly what it means. We don't know what's going on. But like in terms of style, like one thing I love about this is I've actually got it on my screen right now, is the greenish hue that's for the Matrix, and the bluish hue that represents the real world. And now that's like we use that today, and I mean we use that today in like different things, and I find it like that's the first movie I can think of that's actually used that. So yeah, I mean,
and the concept of bullet time is also something that's uniquely Matrix. This like taking an action scene and having it suddenly shift into slow motion as we see these bullets fly past them. Like how many times have we seen that reenacted in film since then?
Oh yeah. And not just that, it's that element of the camera detaching from like a physical place, you know, because like it's not just like that it's slowing, it's like it's moving through the space in a way that like naturally a camera probably couldn't do, and capturing everything in real time, or in real time and playing it slow. It's something that would become massively influential over the next few years. And I kind of feel like that breakthrough in terms of that element of visual effects that you see kind of throughout the movie. It's so funny because by today's standards, it all seems so tame. That because of what we become accustomed to now. That's kind of usually the fate of movies that pioneer new ways to do things. But every time it happens, just kind of like it sometimes it's, I don't know, I can't describe it. It's just fascinating how you go back and see the early versions of concepts. It's like when people talked about I remember in film class in college they talked about Citizen Kane, sort of pioneering the transition or like the flashback transition, and I'm like, what did they do before? It doesn't seem possible that it would take that would be something somebody would have to discover. But yeah.
So what you're saying is The Matrix is Citizen Kane.
One could say that it is one of the more important movies of the last 30, 40 years.
That's a good way to put that. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, because there are people who aren't really big fans of The Matrix.
Right.
People who don't like The Matrix. But I think regardless of your opinion of the film, you kind of have to acknowledge the impact that it had.
Yeah, and I understand, you know, we're strictly talking about The Matrix tonight, but I understand that for a lot of people, the sequels kind of ruined the appeal of the entire franchise for people as well. But I think if you just look at this film and what it does, I find it hard to find anything to dislike about it, really. But that's just me. Of course, other people are gonna not like things, but I know a lot of people just like, Reloaded and Revolution suck. The whole thing sucks. I don't want to watch it.
Yeah,
you can watch a movie without watching its sequels. That is
I have no real memories of the sequels, so I'm excited to get into
I remember one scene from Reloaded.
Yeah. So let's talk about the story for a minute. We talked a lot about the visual effects and kind of the achievements it made in style. But the story, I think, is also equally really fascinating. So you got Neo, who starts out as Thomas Anderson. He's just
Right. Mr. Anderson.
a regular old dude, computer programmer who at night, like Batman, is a hacker, computer hacker by the name of Neo, which I feel like in the late 90s, people thought hacker as like exactly what this is.
Yeah.
Hacking into some like world altering simulation and not just whatever he was doing. So he is contacted from the outside by Lawrence Fishburne's Morpheus, and is basically dragged into this whole situation because he is believed to be the one to help free the human race from this captivity, which is a heavy topic.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I wanna talk
Yeah.
about the fight scene real quick. I'm just going to jump into that because in addition to the fight scene between Neo and Morpheus, because in addition to it just looking amazing and that being one of the, in my opinion, one of the best choreographed and looked fights in movie history, there's so much like storytelling going on because this is the first time really that Neo is getting into the real depths of the Matrix and understanding what can be done and what can't be done. And the dynamic between Morpheus and Neo in this whole scene is just a storytelling like juggernaut. You've got Neo who believes so passionately in this thing, in this Matrix, and that he's trying to understand it. And you can tell that he really wants to understand it. And then you have Morpheus who wants Neo to get it, but also is not going to just give it to him. So he's got that mentor aspect where he's like, bring it to me, but I'm not going to take it easy on you. I'm going to kick your ass.
Yeah.
And you're going to deal with it. And then you finally get that moment where Neo understands what's going on and really just leans into it and doesn't work, gets his ass kicked. And then Morpheus is like, how did I beat you? And they get into the depths of that. And I just think that whole scene is fantastic.
Yeah, I think rewinding from that a little bit, there's this sort of there's a really heavy tone, and there's a lot of like there's a lot of concepts thrown at you really fast. But I feel like the movie never really. I don't feel like if you're a new viewer, if you've never seen The Matrix, I don't feel like you're going to be that lost, because even though some of the ideas like that go a little bit maybe underexplained at times, it's not something that like you're going to go, I don't understand, I don't feel like I get it. I feel like they give you enough information to keep going. And so, and Neo ends up being a really good, avatar for your questions. Because as he kind of figures things out, I feel like you can figure things out. So that fight scene becomes a really good example of them giving you information and allowing you to sort of complete the puzzle yourself.
Yeah. And I think another, now that you mentioned Neo and it being kind of an avatar for the viewer, I think it also works in the story perspective of Neo being this person who wants to serve a bigger purpose and to be a part of something bigger than he is in this boring computer programming job in this boring world, and then to be brought into, or to learn that there is a whole nother world out there that is the real one, I think is something that can also be related to pretty easily with viewers.
Yeah, Andrew, what do you think?
I could relate to that, I guess.
I really do think that the story was like very original. And one thing I've been thinking about is like throughout the entire movie, we're used to today, like one of the things that we have now, thanks to like Marvel, is just like this giant spectacle. This giant spectacle of movies that we're almost accustomed to, and now it's almost like second nature. And The Matrix, when it came along, people didn't know what it was, and ultimately that was the question. But if anything, if there's one thing I can gather about this movie, is that there's no twist to it, if that makes sense. And like what I mean by that is that like there's no strange plot twists towards the end. There's nothing like really twisty in terms of like what happens. Ultimately, what we get is a lot of big expectations and even more delivery. And like we're fully invested in the story because we want to know what happens to Neo and why he's here. And Neo wants to know why he's here. And we want to know what's going on throughout the movie. We want to know what's happening. We're finding out everything in the same time frame as Neo. And that's what I like about this movie a lot.
Yeah, Neo kind of lives through the twists.
He kind of lives through the twists. And we're finding out just the same. Like, we have no idea what the Matrix is. We're presumably living in the real world.
Or are we?
Or are we?
Who knows?
Who knows? But
yeah.
But no, it's very. What the other thing I like about it is its take on. There's so much that can be said about the Matrix, really on anything. And the one thing I will say is like its mythology and take on religion. Like it can be, you can construe this on philosophy as well. There's so much about the Matrix that's just so talked about, but like the mythology, I mean, one character's name is Neo, another character's name is Morpheus. What do you have there? I mean, there's so much more that can be said. Obviously, we don't have time, but there's
we got time.
There's so much you can.
We got time. What do you want to say, Andrew?
No, the only thing I want
it's 9:20. It's 9:20. Landry doesn't kick us off till closer to 10. We're good.
Okay, all right.
Well, pin.
The only thing I will say is that like there's so much like plot wise and what the characters mean, because Morpheus was kind of like, I want to say that Morpheus was kind of like he's not the leader of the underworld. That's not what I meant. He's more like a carrier. And Neo, meaning new, he's almost like a Christ-like figure.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
Neo meaning new. It's an anagram for one.
Yeah.
It's
in the end, he rises from the dead.
Yeah.
One is the loneliest number that you ever knew.
Well,
yeah, and
one.
Excellent reference.
To sort of articulate what you're saying again, Andrew, the movie doesn't have like a surprise bad guy.
No.
It doesn't have a sudden oh, you thought, like it does. I don't know.
We do have a character turn though.
We do have a character turn, but it is kind of signposted a little bit by.
Well, sure, but still,
we shouldn't trust his lies anyway.
But with I mean, we didn't really expect that, but because since there was a lead up to it, but everything that's I want to say that everything is very well fleshed out within the first 20 minutes, and then afterwards, without it being twisty, you have absolutely no idea what's going to happen. And I think that's just where everything just turns completely exciting.
One of the things that I really liked was, again, I've mentioned how smart this movie is. And one of the questions that I wrote down, again, this is the first time that I've probably seen this movie since early 2000s. I asked, how did people discover that they were not living in the real world and that it was the Matrix? And then, my process watching these movies and getting ready for the discussions is I take a lot of notes throughout the movie. And, not even having to scroll through my notes, there's an answer to my question where Morpheus talks about there used to be a person who could manipulate the Matrix himself and figured out that it wasn't real and started waking up people. And so that revolution is essentially how these people discovered what was going on and how this fight is continued. And that this person who was originally able to manipulate the Matrix would be reincarnated after he died. And that's how Neo is believed to be the one. So, I mean, you ask a question and the movie is smart enough to go, here's your answer. And they bring out so many good questions throughout the movie. The whole premise of the Oracle and what she says, what does this mean? They tease what Trinity's visit to the Oracle told her. And you don't find that out until the very end as a confirmation that Neo is the one. Because even though Morpheus is so steadfast in his belief that Neo is the one, the Oracle basically says, "You're not, buddy." Yep. He starts to doubt it. You see him at the end get shot by Agent Smith right in the chest 4, 5, 6 times. He dies. And then at that end, Trinity's like, "You can't die because the Oracle told me I would fall in love and that person would be the one, and I love you." And that brings him back to life, really just confirming everything that was being questioned this whole time. So it's just, this whole thing keeps you in suspense throughout this whole thing, and it's really just well done.
Oh, and it's a good job of foreshadowing too.
Yeah, I wanted to take a second to read a comment that we got here on the SoundsTooth Facebook page from our good buddy Daniel Ott.
Daniel Ott.
Yes. So the movie, The Matrix, was created by the Wachowskis, who are siblings. They are trans women. And Daniel mentioned, he had a good comment about the rereading of the films from a trans perspective. He said the trans rereading of the films, especially the first, is also fascinating. The entire concept of identity and understanding these were filmmakers figuring out their own identity as trans women. Smith refusing to call him by his chosen name, Neo literally breaking out of a man's body in the climax. Switch was supposed to be a male in the real world and a female in the Matrix. Details like that. And that's a really interesting, those are really interesting points too.
Yeah,
because this movie was made pre their at least public transition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and obviously the trans movement wasn't quite what it was in 1999 that it is today. So being able to go back and view movies from that sort of from a sort of new perspective, even only what was it? Its anniversary 20 years later. You can view this movie like Andrew said through a multitude of different philosophies and viewpoints, whether it's political, religious, cultural, or I was trying to think of a fourth thing there and couldn't think of one. Social,
Yeah.
I don't really know enough to. I'm not educated enough on that particular topic to speculate on specifically, but if you are interested, hey, let us know in the comments. You can put some more on our Patreon where we're taking some questions as well.
Yeah. Facebook, Twitch, whatever. But yeah, I definitely appreciate Daniel leaving that comment. That's a very good point. Really, when you break it down to the movie to its most base level, it's kind of about how the world, so much of the world you're living in is a lie, or it's not real, or something like that. So
right.
it's very interesting.
It's weird how you can even take that and apply it to now. I mean, we're not living in a real life AI simulated matrix, but a lot of times people put themselves in their own matrix where it's a bubble that you see what you want to see and you believe what you want to believe. Anything that's different is not good. And you can look at Cypher as that particular character where he was given the truth, decided he didn't like it, and wanted to go back to not believing and not knowing anything. And that's so relevant to now.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're at a point now where you don't even have to go into like deep corners of the internet to find just the most insane crap. There's nothing more mainstream online than Facebook, and even it is full of lies. And I hate to tell you, Andrew,
no,
it's not real.
Andrew
now, whatever you see on the SoundsTooth and so many sequels pages is completely real, though.
Yes, that's true.
Add that. But so much of it's bullcrap, and people believe it, and they won't listen to anything else but this lie that they have chosen to believe.
No, as Cypher says, ignorance is bliss, right? I'd rather not even know that these problems exist than have to deal with them.
Fair
But
enough.
So to kind of move to a new space of it, I'm gonna be honest.
Be
not
honest.
not even though I have the costume tonight and I was talking about the Legacy movie, not necessarily huge on the Matrix personally. Like I do think it's a good film, but it's just one of those things of like it never grabbed me as a kid. Like Star Wars, Back to the Future, those kind of things grabbed me. They really sparked my imagination, the thought process behind those worlds and those things. But the Matrix, I think because of and it's kind of like there's some other movies that are this way, but I think it's kind of like the dystopian element just kind of makes it so bleak. Even with the idea of Neo being like this new savior figure, it's just sometimes I was like, it's cool and it's black and leather and all that, but that really wasn't my style. I do think the story is at its base nothing necessarily brand new, but the style and the delivery, that's really that's the real component of this movie that will live forever, is how stylistically different it was than what most people had seen at the time. As Andrew said, it drew from a lot of Hong Kong and anime and different film elements that have been tried before, but it really put all that together in a way that people hadn't seen before in 1999.
That's a little it's a little surprising because like the Wachowskis, before they were in movies, were in comic books, like big time. And most of what we watch anymore today is comic book movies,
right?
So they were. I don't want to say they were pioneering it because they weren't.
Oh goodness!
But they definitely helped popularize it, like popularize like comic book adaptations. Obviously we had several years before that, but
yeah,
they didn't hurt, is what you're saying.
Correct.
No, but they proved that you can put together definitely a higher concept action movie. Because this is probably one of the first of those. This is kind of like, because it's pretty high concept, everything that goes on and is involved in it. There's all these allusions to classic literature. You have follow, like see how deep the rabbit hole goes and follow the white rabbit. And Cypher makes a reference to Wizard of Oz. Like there's all these allusions to our own mythology that somehow somehow did a really good job of persisting into the late 2100s. And so there's all this intellectual components to it. And as Andrew talked about, there's mythology within the Matrix universe that kind of exists, though, the origins of these names and things, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I want to jump into the legacy of this movie because, there's so
Are you going to go where I think you're going?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, this is going to be fun.
I'm going to create a Matrix here where we live in a world where Will Smith did not turn down this part.
Ooh.
Oh,
that he was cast as Neo. I'm sure that most
and what about Trinity?
If you don't know, I'm going to go through who we could have had in these other roles.
Andrew,
Will Smith is
this is what you should make. You should Photoshop this poster.
This is the most famous one. Will Smith famously turned down the role of Neo to star in the critically acclaimed, Oscar-snubbed movie Wild Wild West.
Wild Wild West.
And
an incredible decision.
That is,
in hindsight.
Yes. He has openly talked about this and said that it's one of the biggest mistakes that he's made. From what I gathered, he said that he was not a mature enough actor at the time to understand the pitch. He said in the pitch meeting with the Wachowskis, he did not understand what they were talking about with the bullet time and all of this information. He had no idea, so he was like, well, I'm going to go shoot some guns and be in chaps.
But an animatronic spider, that made sense to him.
That makes perfect sense.
Yes.
A giant robot spider and cowboys.
Insinuating, Josh? What are you insinuating? Of course, that
I'm
makes
just
more
saying
sense.
that maybe a giant robot spider in a steampunk Wild West scenario
movie
is at best the same amount of nonsense.
absolutely not.
Okay.
Continuing real
All
quick,
right.
Neo was also
Go on,
offered
yes.
to Nicolas Cage, who turned it down.
Good.
Warner Brothers wanted Brad Pitt
Kung Fu.
and Val Kilmer. The Wachowskis' first choice was Johnny Depp. As far as
Johnny Depp, never my first choice.
Probably would have. Yeah, that probably would have been fine. Honestly, 1999 Johnny Depp before he
It would
went.
have been
silly,
fine, sure,
would
but
have been fine.
do we want
But
fine?
Johnny Depp, I don't know. I'd have to see a picture of Johnny Depp in '99. I don't feel like he's quite as everyman as Keanu Reeves kind of looked.
So let's take out Keanu. Was that all the options that we had
for Neo?
For Neo,
yes.
So we got Brad Pitt,
Mm.
Nicolas Cage, Val Kilmer, Will Smith, Johnny Depp.
Mm-hmm.
Rank those. Who should do it?
Honestly, I'm gonna believe Will Smith when he says he wasn't quite mature enough for the role.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say Brad Pitt compared to the rest of those.
Mm-hmm.
Brad Pitt was my choice too. I think he would have owned that movie.
Yeah.
Then Will Smith. Then Nick Cage.
I would have gone with
Val
Johnny
Kilmer.
Depp.
And then Johnny Depp. Well, Val Kilmer was for Morpheus.
No, he was for Neo
I-
and Morpheus.
Oh.
He can't be
According-
both.
They were looking at him for both. What do you want me to do? I don't know.
I don't know.
I personally would have voted like an alternate Neo would have been Val Kilmer.
Oof.
Really?
Don't even
Listen.
know. I can't even imagine it really.
Listen, I brought this up because here's the thought process that I had with this. Listen, I love Will Smith. 1999 was peak Will Smith. He'd already done so many.
great time to be Will
Independence
Smith.
Day,
Mhm.
Fresh Prince was done and over. He'd done Bad Boys. He'd done
Men in Black.
Men in Black at that point in time, which is something that we just covered before this one. So you can go back and listen to
Yeah.
those episodes about how we feel about Will Smith and Men in Black. Hint, we like it.
Some of it.
But I don't think that in any movie I've ever seen Will Smith in, I cannot see him as Neo. And here's why. Because there's so much martial arts in this movie where I just don't believe that he would have been that type of Neo. The Neo that we have now would have been something completely different had it been Will Smith. Because while I think that he would have put a good faith effort into it, I don't think that fits his persona as a human being. I can't see him doing martial arts. I can't see him being so deadpan because he's so funny. In the Men in Black episodes, we talked about how nobody wants to see Will Smith as a straight man.
Right.
And that's true. Nobody wants to see, he is a funny person. So he would have had quick one-liners. There's a line where they talk about the squids. I've gone blank. The Sentinels. Sentinels. And they say they're killing machines built only for one thing. And in my brain, I pictured Will Smith cracking a joke and going, making pancakes.
Yeah.
And that's that persona that Will Smith would have had.
That's where my head went too.
You built for one thing.
Not necessarily Will Smith, but just they went, "You're killing machines built to do one thing," and I was like, well, I assume killing. Then if they're killing machines, they're built to do one thing: search and destroy.
When Keanu has that, he kicks him, and then he does that leg thing. I can't see Will Smith doing things like that. Like, it would have been something completely different. I would love to see like a tester. I know that it doesn't exist, but goodness gracious.
No, they should bring him in for the fourth one.
They should.
We're ready for deadpan. We're ready for straight man Will Smith now. Bring him in for the fourth one.
We've seen enough of dramatic actor Will Smith that I think he could pull it off today.
Yeah.
That's the thing too. You were talking about Will Smith being much more known for his comedy back then. This movie is fairly humorless. There's not a lot in terms of
it's not funny.
relief.
Very straightforward.
The closest thing to a real laugh is when Morpheus jumps over the building and Keanu goes, "Whoa!" Like that's kind of it, or unless you find Mouse funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
He has moments.
I feel like he was supposed to be like a comedy relief, and not really.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
who else do we got? Let's move on to another
Brad Pitt.
character.
Okay, so
I agree, Brad Pitt.
Going into Morpheus, it looks like Gary Oldman, Samuel L. Jackson,
see that. I
and
can
Val
see that.
Kilmer were all people discussed to play
I could
Morpheus.
see all those. I could see Val Kilmer as Morpheus. I could see I could see Sam Jackson. And Gary Oldman, he'd be good too. Yeah.
I definitely see Gary Oldman.
And then
Yeah, Gary Oldman would be interesting. I see him as more of like a reserved, quiet, wise Morpheus.
If they were going to put him as somebody, I mean, completely recasting, and you were like, we have Gary Oldman, where do you want him to be? He'd be the Oracle, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sam Jackson would be good. I mean, he's already kind of nailed down the idea of this leadership type of role. I mean, it's kind of a subdued Nick Fury, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see that.
I feel like at that time period,
he might even be a little more aggressive.
Yeah, at that time period, Lawrence Fishburne and Sam Jackson are kind of at the same level.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one, Carrie Ann Moss as Trinity. The leading candidate for that was Janet Jackson.
Janet Jackson.
Yeah. So imagine this movie with Will Smith, Samuel L. Jackson, and Janet Jackson. How about that?
That's a whole other movie. I tell you what.
It's definitely different.
Janet Jackson. Interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm having to look her up a little bit.
She said that she had to turn it down. Why did she have to turn it down? She turned it down initially because of conflicts. That's all it says. In an interview, she stated that turning down the role was difficult for her, so she later referenced The Matrix in the intro and outro interludes in her 10th studio album, Discipline.
Yeah, I've never seen that, but
I feel like I remember some kind of music video where she was very Matrixy, but I don't. It could be misremembering.
She did the following year join the cast of Nutty Professor 2, The Clumps.
Oh, that's a step up.
Maybe coming soon to so many sequels near you.
hey,
That's
you know,
great
when you miss out on something like that, you go, well, next thing I get, I'm taking.
Mhm.
You know, last time I
Yeah.
turned something down, it turned out to be The Matrix. This Nutty Professor 2, The Clumps movie is going to explode.
I mean, the first one's got its moments. The
Yeah,
first
Nutty
one has its
Professor is a
moments.
very fun movie. It's a very fun vehicle.
Did they come out in the same year? I feel like they did.
What?
The Matrix and the Nutty Professor 2.
No, The Matrix came out in 99. Clumps came out in 2000.
And you better believe we'll be doing the Nutty Professor someday soon.
Oh, it's got to happen, right? Hopefully, it's our next live show.
First one, great.
Do you want to get into your box office, David?
We
got
do that.
10-ish minutes left, looks like.
We can do that. We can get into box office stats for The Matrix. I do want to, before we move on, I do want to also comment Hugo Weaving. Fantastic, right?
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
So always.
As Agent Smith. All right, here we go. If you're new to the show, this is the box office part of the show where we look through how the movie performed. And it's pretty straightforward. The Matrix debuted the weekend of March 31st, way back in 1999. That's a Wednesday. So it actually has a 5-day opening of $37.1 million. If you shrink that to just its actual opening weekend of April 2nd through the 4th, $27 million. Now, that sounds like a kind of small opening, but the movie would end up having really great legs and go on to make $171.4 million in the United States. So let's see what opened up against The Matrix in 1999. So the number 2 movie that weekend was 10 Things I Hate About You. One of my favorite movies. I enjoyed 10 Things I Hate About You. It's fun.
Love it.
Young
Very
Heath
good.
Ledger. And at number 3, this is a movie that it's going to either be a movie Andrew's seen and loves, or Andrew will never heard of it like the rest of us. It's called The Out of Towners.
I've heard of it. I've never seen it.
It's actually a remake of I think a Neil Simon play.
Yeah.
That was made in like the 40s. Anyway.
Oh, wow.
Then at number 4, you have Analyze This.
Was that the first one or the second one?
And Billy Crystal. And then at number 5, you have The Forces of Nature. Just missing out on the top 5 that weekend with $4 million was Ed TV, which is another movie.
Ed TV.
I will say,
guys
I
remember that
love
one?
Ed TV.
So 0 sequels
I'm
in
done
the
with
top
you,
5 that weekend.
You
0.
love Ed TV.
I do.
What is wrong with you?
A lot.
So,
That's basically like awful Truman Show.
Ed TV is
Yeah,
great. Everybody loves that TV.
David!
What? Have y'all been?
You know what? No.
Have y'all been dogging Ed TV? That movie's fun.
This is not an Ed TV podcast, and it will not be.
Matthew McConaughey, terrific in that. It's the everyman's Truman Show.
All right, fine.
All right.
I'll watch it. I'll give it a shot.
Oh, you never seen Ed TV?
If I did, I was 9.
It's all right. It's all right. It's very by today it's kind of ahead of its time.
It is.
Sure.
Thank you.
It's ahead of its time, but it's also anyway. So zero sequels in the top 5 that weekend with The Matrix. Men in Black, like I said, we're going to finish.
Ed TV ahead of its time.
$171.4 million in the United States over its 22-week run. You add $290 million from overseas to bring its worldwide total to $463.5 million. So if we take a look at 1999 as a whole, the number 1 movie, as you may guess, was, that's right, Star Wars: The Phantom Menace, bringing in $431 million. At number 2, you guys got to remember this because we were just in 1999 not long ago. At number 2, The Sixth Sense.
Oh.
Number 3 was Toy Story 2. Number 4 was Austin Powers: The Spy Who Shagged Me. And at number 5, like we said, The Matrix.
The Spy Who Shagged Me made more money than The Matrix?
Not a whole lot more, but it did make more, yes.
It made a lot of money.
We're talking about peak Mike Myers, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I do like The Spy Who Shagged Me, but like just that premise makes me upset.
So just for the sake of this 1999 being a huge year, what was 6 through 10 real quick?
6 through 10. Number 6, you have the highest grossing. Well, no, that's not true because Toy Story 2 is. At number 6, you have Disney's Tarzan. At number 7, you have Adam Sandler and Big Daddy with the young Sprouse twins.
Mm-hmm.
At number 8, you have The Mummy. At number 9, Julia Roberts and I think Richard Gere in Runaway Bride. Great. And at number 10, it's probably it's another one of those important movies. It's The Blair Witch Project.
Yes.
Finding how different elements of horror. But I mean, you could just keep going through the list of 1999, and it's like good movie, solid movie, good movie, solid movie, good movie. There's not a lot to dislike about 1999.
No.
So the highest grossing non-sequel of that year, The Sixth Sense. The highest grossing sequel, Toy Story 2. Yeah. Obviously you could count Star Wars in that, but it's a prequel, so it's not technically a sequel.
Technicality.
So let's see. So another honorable mention. So 1990. If we look at the year 2000, so that's this is your Oscar winner for that year is American Beauty.
Yep.
American Beauty. We've made one previous trip to 1999, like it was just mentioned. It was to review Toy Story 2. If you want to check out our Toy Story podcast, they are probably one of my favorite series we've done. Toy Story 1, 2, 3, and 4. So check those out. That's it for the box office stats. Josh, you won the Letterboxd game last week.
I did. So to explain this to new viewers and listeners, we go off a website called Letterboxd, which is like a social network for movie fans, if you don't know that, to guess basically what the out of 5 scale score the movie has. We used to do Rotten Tomatoes. That was less fun. It became less fun over time. And Letterboxd was just a little more fan driven. So we're going to do that. So like I said, it's on a scale of 0 to 5. You could go 2.6, 4.7, whatever you want. David, Andrew, and Garrett are all going to guess the score, and then I will reveal who is closest, thus declaring a winner. So, who wants to start? You go ahead and guess. I've got it all pulled up.
4.1.
Okay. Andrew?
I'm going to go 4.3.
Oh, you guys are going to make it hard, aren't you?
That's what she said.
Oh. Yep.
No, not to you, she didn't.
Oh. Ouchie.
Yeah, take that from my wife.
4. What did you say, Andrew?
4.3.
3.
All right, 4.5. That's
okay.
Whatever.
So we got 4.1, 4.3, and 4.5. I will tell you that on Letterboxd, this movie has been watched by 493,000 members. it is a favorite movie of 5.5 thousand.
Wow.
And the winner of this particular game with a perfect guess is David with 4.1. This movie was rated 4.1 out of 5 on Letterboxd. And just for fun, I'll tell you that on Rotten Tomatoes, the score is 87%. Which honestly, I feel like this movie is at least a 90.
I was going to say that's
low.
kind of low for
I think
a movie like that.
there is a lot of people out there who look at this movie as creating movies that they don't like, you know?
Yep.
Like they look at this movie as being responsible for a bunch of pseudo intellectual bullcrap that would be influenced by The Matrix. And I think that there's a few people who there's just about people who just don't want to like it. So that I think that who knows how much of that drug the score down, but I had a feeling, mostly because of when we did Lord of the Rings, which you go check out our Lord of the Rings podcasts. When we did Lord of the Rings and all of those were 4.3, I thought, I don't think The Matrix is going to be higher than any of the Lord of the Rings movies.
So that's good thinking.
Yeah.
But
okay.
What do we rank it?
I rank it a 5. 5 out of 5.
I give it a 5 out of 5 too.
Yep, I also say 5.
I will
David's gonna ruin Combo Breaker.
I am. I'm going to say 4.5.
Okay.
Because I like it. I like it. And I think it's got a good influence, but it's not necessarily. I don't know. There's more that they could have done, I think.
Yeah.
Well, like what?
Okay.
I'm interested. I want to pick your brain. Like what else could they have done? Do you think? Like what in a David world? What would the Matrix be beyond what it is?
Oh gosh. I think
Timothy Oliphant. Am I wrong?
Patrick Stewart would make a good meal. Patrick Stewart would be
Patrick
Morpheus.
Stewart.
Carrie-Anne Moss would be that one girl from Mean Girls.
Lindsay Lohan.
Let's see. No. Lacey Shea Bear. No, I think that one of the key problems for me with the Matrix is that I don't feel like I don't know. It's hard to describe.
He doesn't have a reason. That's what it is.
I don't know. I don't have a reason. You know
what? You don't have to. Like you said earlier, it just didn't. You just didn't like connect with it. I guess you said it was a good movie. You obviously see that. It just didn't connect with you, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
there's plenty of great movies that we don't like.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it when we talked about like Lord of the Rings. There's something about it that doesn't really appeal to everybody, but you kind of respect its legacy. And I don't know, I like it, but I don't love it, and so I don't know.
Okay, fair enough.
Maybe it is a 5. I don't know.
Hey, this is all on you, buddy.
Well, I have a feeling that
articulate it.
When I do the average, it might be rounded up to a 5 anyway. We'll find out.
Yeah, probably.
You could see what our final score is on the So Many Sequels Letterboxd page if you're a member there. And if you're not, and you're a movie fan, you really should go check it out. It's a cool place to just follow movie reviewers, and people keep lists of movies that you may have never even heard of. And it's just a great place to discover film and to keep track of what you're watching.
Yeah, it's kind of fun.
We're going to wrap it up. I'll let the SoundsTooth guys know that we're wrapping up now. What?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to do our regular wrap-up. You can find us online on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just search So Many Sequels in all of those apps. Of course, you can listen to our podcasts on the SoundsTooth app or wherever else you want to get podcasts. We typically release once a week. Once we're through with the series, we'll do a special little video to announce the next one, and we'll keep going through the year. And we do fun things like we'll do an Oscars show if there is an Oscars this year. We'll do an end of the year wrap up. We'll tell you what our favorite movies or what our most anticipated movies of 2021 are going to be, which are probably going to be a rehash of what 2020 was supposed to be.
Right.
It'll be fun. So find us online on all of those places. Be sure that you also go donate some money if you can to the links that SoundsTooth is posting to go help out the artists and service workers impacted by the coronavirus. That would be awesome too. And I think I hit everything. Did I miss anything, guys?
I just want to throw out. I want to throw out that another place that you can donate to is Circle Cinema. That is a local cinema house that we are most of us are members there. They're a nonprofit. They've been around for almost 100 years, doing various things. They do a lot of indie films and events that support, local artists as well. So they just released a new T-shirt that you can buy for, I believe, $25. So that's a great way to help them out. And Flash Flood Printing, which is also a local print shop that made those shirts. They seem to be splitting the money. So that's something that you can donate to as well.
Cool. All right. So do those things. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you, SoundsTooth, for having us. We had fun.
It was great,
See you
guys.
next time.
Hey, thanks for doing that, guys.
Yeah, we loved it.
No problem. And we finished under time. Oh, wonder.
Yes.
That is the first.
We'll get you guys on a crossover on something. We've still got some wrestling movies to watch.
Hell yes.
David and I always try to make wrestling references.
We didn't make one for this episode.
We can go old school. We can do like Grunt the movie or something like that. Like really old.
Listen, if you do Ready to Rumble, I'm there.
Oh, we just did that one a week or so ago. So we've done Ready to Rumble, and I made Sean Singleton and Zach Amon watch No Holds Barred. And
have you done that one where Goldberg's a Santa?
Oh, Santa's Sleigh.
Santa's Sleigh.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have not. No, have
Need to
not
get
done
that one on.
Well, I
during
also
Christmas
just
season.
recently watched the main event on Netflix, and that is terrible. So if you
Was
do
it like-
that one too,
It's like Mike, but with wrestling, yeah?
yep, it's pretty bad. It's basically like Spider-Man, but with a WWE mask. So
You should watch an episode of the Big Show on Netflix.
I haven't
done
watched
that.
yet.
I think they're trolling us with that show.
It is like, did you guys ever watch the Bill Engvall show on TBS?
I did.
It's like
Yeah.
the same show, but all the jokes are, instead of redneck jokes, it's just Big Show jokes.
I looked up the guy that wrote the guys that developed that show, and they've done good, funny stuff. And so I literally think that they just tried to make the hokiest like family sitcom they could. It's some like meta like Landry Miller shit or something.
Yeah.
Ew.
It's like it's like somebody watched Yes Dear in Spanish and then translated it back to English.
Well,
Yes,
we appreciate
dear.
you guys being on. Landry,
Oh,
you
yeah.
have anything to say to him as we get out of here and bring in your talk show cronies?
No.
Nope. I have literally nothing to say.
All right, guys,
Okay.
that was awesome. Thank you so much. And yeah, definitely donate to Circle Cinema out there, guys. We need places like that to stick around. So.